Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to the darkest moments in TV history, and it is Nick Crowley. I have reacted to the channel in the past, one of my favourite channels on YouTube in terms of the content, because, I mean, although it's a lot of it's dark, it is very top tier content, and yeah, we're going to check this out and see. I feel like I've probably done one of these reactions, or a few of these on my Patreon. I've done a few of these before as well, like YouTube's darkest videos for sure, but yeah, this channel's one of my favorites, and although I did stop reacting to this on YouTube because of like the content being a bit maybe too much for YouTube, I was always worried about them like just demonetizing or age restricting, which is the sort of stuff they do with this content. I'm back doing another one, but yeah, if you want to see reactions like this, some will go to my Patreon, and there's a lot of other stuff there as well. But we're gonna check this out, and yeah, let's just see what things are in this video. And I see the Bradford fire, and I have a feeling I know what this will be. It's to do with the football stadium, right? Well, I didn't know there was footage of it like this. I just knew it happened. We're gonna see. It is. See, this is mental. Mental.
Saturday, May 11th, 1985. A soccer match is underway in Bradford, West Yorkshire, England, between the visiting team Lincoln City and the home team Bradford City, a group riding the high of having just won their divisional championship in the week prior. This was the season finale for the club, one last match for the team and the fans to cap off what was otherwise a historic run. However, it wasn't just the season that this game would mark the end of. At the time, Bradford City played their matches at a site called Valley Parade Stadium, with the facilities growing a reputation around the league as being incredibly outdated, and to many, downright neglected. The awnings that stretched over the fans were made of old rotted wood, while underneath the stands were heaps of old trash that would pile up all throughout the season and rarely if ever be cleaned. The whole place was a mess, and the city knew it too, which eventually led to their decision to just rebuild the stadium completely, with plans being set to tear the whole thing down soon after the game would end.
No.
But as it turns out, fate wasn't willing to wait quite that long.
Oh my days. See, yeah, I mean, when we see what's about to see, it's insane. But the fact of that backstory of how they were planning to basically take it down, wow. That is scary, man. Flipping hell. I don't know what sort of footage we're going to see here. I've seen pictures, I've seen a few videos, but it is dark, man. Very dark.
Within the stands, a spectator was watching on, enjoying a cigarette, taking one last drag before flicking it out of his hands, eyes still locked intently on the game, failing to notice that the cigarette butt had slipped through the floorboards of the bleacher and landed on the ground below. This almost immediately caused a small fire to break out, which was noted by the commentator John Helm.
We've actually got a fire in the stand on the far side of the ground.
Oh, flipping hell.
And that looks very nasty indeed.
Despite the cigarette only being dropped a minute or so before, the fire was already visible from the stands, as within that old stadium was the perfect makings of a disaster. When that cigarette fell to the ground, it didn't just land on the grass, because the grass was likely not even visible at that point, and was buried under mounds and mounds of garbage that acted as the perfect kindling for the blaze. And that wasn't all. Remember, one of the main sticking points of the rebuild was the fact that the awnings that reached above the fans were made entirely of that old wood, meaning that you had heaps of kindling, tons of wood, and now a spark. With the final fatal factor being that it was a windy day. It was the perfect storm, and the results were devastating.
1 minute later. Flipping hell. It's 1 minute later. Okay, see, I have seen. Okay, I like that they're not showing the video, but you can. I think you can see the video on YouTube, right? Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I mean, I guess 'cause it's all wood, right? It spreads that quick. But this is just 1 minute after, and then another minute. I guess it's. I mean, it's all pretty much in flames already. But yeah, it's gonna be like a flipping. I can't even imagine how it's gonna be a minute after this. But yeah, man. And you got to think there were people trapped. Obviously, they went to the toilets because obviously you go in mid games when you're at a sporting event, you'll go to the toilets or get food and stuff. they'll be trapped underneath this bit, and well, yeah, they were just stuck, right?
The black ball of smoke is rising hundreds of feet in the air.
It took approximately 3 minutes for that small fire to engulf the entirety of the stands.
Fuck.
As the black smoke billowed into the sky and the crowd desperately rushed to the field to get away from the heat.
Crazy.
And the whole place is scorching. They've been talking about having a new ground at Valley Parade. They might soon have to have one, because this is the day that Valley Parade Football Club...
See, the stuff that I remember seeing is like there'll be like people dragging like people out who are like on fire, unconscious, dragging them out of this area. So shocking, man.
The football ground
There's footage of that on YouTube.
is burning down.
The footage is highly disturbing, so much so that I can't show the entire thing. But during this time, however, a radio broadcast was on air, with the audio giving us a good idea of just how chaotic the scene was, and the moments when the blaze really erupted.
We're on fire here at Valley Parade. The whole end of the stand at one side is actually in flames now. I can see the orange of the flames. The game is actually stopped here at Valley Parade, and people are running around. They're running around beside us. They're running around all around us, and people are saying, "Get onto that pitch."
The whole stand is on fire, Tony. It's an absolute. It's spreading quickly. There's going to be problems, Tony.
Let's get all those people out of there. Let's get those people. Just take your time. Don't rush. Don't push. Wait for the kiddies. People are coming round us. You can hear the heat, the smoke coming everywhere. We are going to have to disconnect very shortly, because it really is flaming all the time. We're taking a break. We're getting out of here.
Jesus Christ.
In the stands that day were approximately 6,000 people, and based on the footage, many of whom were able to run to safety very quickly, which gave a sense of hope that the ordeal might end in minimal casualties. Though there was another side of things. Those who chose not to run towards the field opted to go the opposite way, as there was an entrance and exit located directly behind the stands where the fire had started.
That's what happened.
And when the crowd managed to make their way to this exit, they were met with a disturbing revelation. The gates were shut.
Mate.
And those that were open or busted open were also blocked by slow-moving turnstiles, some of which being locked themselves. And as the crowd began pushing more and more to get through these turnstiles, it in turn led to a crush of humanity, with everyone piling on top of one another as the fire slowly consumed them.
Fuck. That is vile, man. I didn't know that was what caused it. Like,
When the smoke cleared and the bodies were counted, 56 had tragically lost their lives, while another 265 were left with serious injuries, with the tragedy leading to numerous new safety standards for soccer stadiums across the country, as Valley Parade's notoriously bad reputation had finally caught up with it on its very last day of operation,
mad.
marking one of the deadliest days in the world of soccer, and one of the darkest moments in television history.
Bodies are being dragged away from that stand.
That recorded the man's actions as he was taping a special program.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Before we dive into our next case here, I want to first thank today's sponsor, Aura, for
Secure that bag, man. I mean, I assume this video is not making the money, so yeah, he's getting all his money from that. Deserves it completely. Secure the bag, baby.
Hey kids and parents, get two parents. You remember when? Well, it's back again.
The world of television is no stranger to death-defying stunts. From the very beginning of broadcasting,
I hate seeing this stuff, man. This is just different level of sort of like, this is always going to go wrong at one point, man.
viewers have been captivated by the sight of people risking their lives to pull off these seemingly impossible spectacles. But while most of these performances are done by trained professionals, perhaps one of the strangest television stunts ever performed was one done by a man with hardly any training at all. Adelir Antonio de Carli. Born in Pelotas, Brazil, Adelir felt a calling early in his life to dedicate himself to God. This eventually led to him becoming a Catholic priest, where he developed a deep connection with those in his community. To many, Adelir was considered a man of the people, someone who had a passion for religion and a goal to make it accessible to as many people as possible, which is where he developed the idea for his most infamous project. Near his home in Brazil was a popular port city named Paranagua, which saw the import and export of a vast array of goods, making it a central hub for truckers to drive to and from on a regular basis. But Adelier began to realize that for these truckers, the vast majority of their lives were lived on the road, and this rarely, if ever, allowed them to practice their religion. This revelation inspired Adelier to start putting together plans to build a chapel at a trucker's rest stop right in Paranagua, which would allow for drivers to stop and worship while on the road. In theory, this seemed like a great idea, and one that the community could easily rally behind, though there was just one issue: the money. Building a chapel and maintaining it was not going to be cheap, and far exceeded what was possible with just his salary, making the whole thing seem like more of a dream than anything, unless he could somehow find a way to raise the funds, which is when he had the idea. He was going to create a public spectacle, one where he would attach...
So this all comes from a good place then. This one's just going to be more depressing as well then. I mean, they're all going to be sad, but this is just like a bit like, okay, so he's trying to do a good thing. He's not got the money, so he's going to probably do something very extreme, and it's going to go wrong.
Himself to hundreds of helium-filled balloons and take off into the sky in a process known as balloon clustering. Believe it or not, this was actually a somewhat well-known stunt at the time, as popularized by a man named John Ninomia, whose footage was shown on numerous television stations a few years prior in 2006. And perhaps having been inspired by this, Adelier viewed the stunt as the perfect opportunity to fund his chapel, with his plan being to break the world record of 19 hours in the air, and in doing so, use the publicity to gather donations.
19 hours in the air?
But the only problem was, he had no experience whatsoever. He had gone skydiving numerous times before, though, and he believed that his familiarity with that would help him to break...
I mean, I don't think many people have experience of having balloons attached to them and floating in the air. So, I mean, that's probably a thing that is very rare to have experience for. Skydiving is not the same, but I guess you got experience in the air to a degree, so... yeah.
Break the record in no time.
It's kind of helpful.
And so, on January 13, 2008, in the city of Umpere, Brazil, over 600 balloons were filled with helium and attached to a chair, which Adelier was then strapped to. He began to lift off the ground, quickly floating high in the sky, as the news cameras were there to film it all.
Oh, there's so many balloons, though. Look how many there are there.
The flight saw him travel roughly 17 miles and reach an altitude of 17,000 feet, highlighting just how dangerous of a stunt this really was. But despite his lack of experience, after around 4 hours, he would touch down safely in Argentina, marking the end of his first successful flight.
Oh.
It was a promising start, and inspired Adelier to continue planning and prepping for his next attempt, which he resoundingly told people would break the world record. In preparation for doing so, he took part in various jungle survival training exercises, and even took up mountain climbing, as he knew he would be flying over remote regions which left him at risk of being stranded somewhere in the wilderness. To further aid in this, Adelier would also have a satellite phone and a GPS, which he would use in tandem to help track his location and call for assistance should things go awry. It seemed that Adelier was ready for anything. But on April 20th, 2008, as a crowd gathered around to see this man attempt this record, the weather began to take a turn for the worse.
Oh, man. So he's seeing this, and I guess he's going to go ahead of it? Fucking hell. I mean, it's dangerous as it is, but this is just going to be crazy, man. Crazy.
During his first flight, the skies were sunny and the winds were calm, but on this day it was gloomy and the rain was falling hard off and on, putting the whole stunt in jeopardy. But Adelier remained confident, boasting that thanks to God he would have perfect weather when he was on his flight.
Porque eu vou subir acima dela. 10 minutos eu ultrapasso ela. E depois vou voar sempre em tempo bom.
And despite some trying to convince him to push things back, he knew that the crowd was there for him. And this was his chance to secure funding for his dream project.
Com essa quantidade de balões, o padre deve viajar a cerca de 5.000 metros de altitude. Com ele lá em cima, vão estar ainda um telefone celular por satélite, GPS...
Chegando a Dourados, no Mato Grosso do Sul. O tempo estava fechado, mas o padre insistiu em voar.
Era 1 da tarde quando ele subiu, levado por 1.000 balões de gás coloridos. Pretendia bater o recorde.
And with that, he was off, soaring quickly into the sky, where he eventually disappeared into those thick rain clouds. For essentially all of his flight, those clouds made it practically impossible to see the man, which was further exasperated by the fact that this time he had used 1,000 balloons, as opposed to 600, which brought him to an even higher elevation, this time touching almost 20,000 feet. But just because...
See, I've got to really understand that. high do planes fly? Oh, okay, so he's very high. Jesus, man. Jesus, so he's very high then.
As he was out of sight, that didn't mean that we couldn't hear from him, as he would soon call down to a local news station to share a somewhat concerning update.
Let me just move this so you can see what it says.
Despite dedicating countless hours of training before the flight, there was one thing that Adelier had failed to prepare for: the GPS, as he was never shown how the device actually worked.
Oh my
and he
God.
only realized that he had no idea how to operate it once he was already at his peak altitude, meaning that he was essentially flying blind. The course he had set out on was set to see him travel 400 miles inland to a city named Dorados, and by his prior calculations...
Don't say he ended up going into the ocean, mate.
Should have still been taking him at the very least in that direction, which for a moment gave him a sense of calm, as he trusted the preparation even if he didn't know his exact coordinates. But after a few hours, as the moon began to rise, so too did the panic within Adelier, as he caught a glimpse of a strange sight on the horizon: the ocean.
Oh my
Somehow,
God.
the wind had done a complete 180 and had blown him in the exact opposite direction that he had prepared for. And before he knew it, he was flying directly over the sea, with no way of stopping himself or even slowing himself down,
Mate.
as he was now flying alone into pitch blackness.
That's horrible.
Adelier called his
Flipping hell.
team and requested they send rescue, but there was no way to give his exact location, and by this point, he was already nearly 40 miles out to sea. After being just 8 hours into his 20-hour flight, the ground team would lose contact with Adelier after receiving a message from him begging for his rescue, and he would never be heard from again.
Oh, fuck. That's brutal.
Up and away. A Catholic priest trying to break a record for most hours flying with helium-filled party balloons vanishes into thin air.
The subsequent search for Adelier was broadcast heavily all across the world, with the media dubbing him as the Balloon Priest. And after nearly 9 days of searching, the only sign of the man was his balloons. They were found detached and floating in the ocean, with there being no sign of the priest whatsoever, leaving his fate as a total mystery. At least at the time. On July 4th, 2008, a tugboat sailing off the coast of Mackay near an offshore oil rig would spot something floating in the water, and upon closer inspection, it would be identified as a body. Or at least part of one, given all that remained was the subject's lower half.
What?
And upon DNA testing, it was confirmed that it did in fact belong to Adelier Antonio De Carli, who likely crashed into the water and drowned, only to be picked away at by various predators of the ocean, thus ending the Balloon Priest's saga in a tragic, yet for many, unsurprising manner.
Mad. I mean, there you go. Unsurprising is the best way to put it. Horrible, though. Horrible.
Night is the most dangerous time for pedestrians along streets and highways. To be on the safe side, walk facing traffic and wear light-colored clothing for quicker recognition.
Walk facing traffic? What?
By approaching drivers.
Who doesn't? Wait, what?
And once you get into a car with somebody, you're at their mercy.
If your car should become disabled, the rule of thumb is stay inside. There are signs you can get to put on the back window to summon for help.
It was the waning days of 1986. News station NBC7 San Diego records and broadcasts a PSA segment about safety on the roads, and specifically what to do if your car breaks down at night. This may seem like a fairly random topic, but for residents of San Diego, fears were rising over just how safe their highways were, as just a few days prior, a 20-year-old college student named Kara Knott had gone missing, only for her car to be found pulled over onto the shoulder of a tall bridge, where underneath, police would find her body, having been strangled brutally and tossed over the side to the ground below.
Oh, man.
Understandably, residents were concerned, with many assuming that she had ran into car troubles and likely exited her vehicle to get help, only to be kidnapped and killed by a nearby motorist.
Jesus.
And due to this, NBC7 thought the segment would be effective in educating those out there, in the hopes of avoiding another situation like Kara's, especially considering at this point, her killer was still somewhere out there. For the video, they even had a highway patrol officer come out to share his tips.
Being a female, you could be raped, robbed if you're a male, all the way to where you could be killed. Once you get in that other person's car, you're at their mercy.
As well as a man whose car had broken down when they were filming.
Do you realize how dangerous it is?
Yes, I realize. In fact, I was putting the gas in, and an 18-wheeler came by and almost blew me away.
Overall, the segment appeared relatively harmless, with the main messaging being to contact authorities and wait for their assistance rather than trusting a stranger. But still, this did little to calm the public's nerves, as paranoia rippled through the community, and speculation began to run rampant on who was responsible for Kara's death, which is when disturbing allegations began to emerge. Following this report, 24 separate women would come forward to share their bizarre encounters that they had had on that very same road in which Kara was found. The girls claim that they were pulled over by a police officer who interrogated them in their cars for upwards of 2 hours.
Oh my god, it's going to be a police officer. Oh, wow.
And the questions being asked during this weren't even relevant to the alleged violations they had committed. Instead, they were more personal, sometimes even sexual, as if the man was trying to seduce them. And it got stranger from there, as when looking into that cop's work record, it was discovered that he was on patrol the night in which Kara had gone missing, and he just so happened to be working that very same stretch of highway. And making things even more concerning was the fact that underneath Kara's fingernails were traces of what appeared to be fabric that matched the material used to make police uniforms.
Oh man.
And hidden in the officer's trunk was heavy rope, with it eventually being revealed that Kara had rope marks around her neck, implying that that's how she was killed.
That is sick, man. Flipping hell, I feel sick.
But what does make these accounts so important and so relevant to the topic at hand was the fact that the officer being named by every single one of these women was a man named Craig Allen Pyre.
Spotting pedestrians at night is difficult.
And once you get into a car with somebody, you're
him
at their
talking.
mercy.
Because if you do decide to walk, the CHP says you never know who you may meet along the road.
Anything can happen.
Is it him?
The very same officer that was shown in the local news report.
No way. Flipping
It would eventually
hell.
be revealed that on December 27th, 1986, Craig Allen Pyre pulled over Kara Knott, flirted with her, raped her, strangled her, and then threw her body off a bridge. Only 2 days later appear on this PSA and try and
days late. That is mental. That is actually mental, man. What is going on? That makes me feel sick.
teach the public how to avoid being kidnapped and killed alongside of the highway.
All the way to where you could be killed. Once you get in that other person's car, you're at their mercy.
If strangers should offer assistance, tell them to call police or the CHP.
Just stay in the vehicle, lock all the doors, turn on the emergency flashers, and wait for help to come.
It's so incredibly haunting to watch this segment back, especially considering what he's saying, knowing that he was quite literally the cause of the crime that inspired the segment to begin with. Just 2 weeks after the program aired, Officer Craig Pyre would be arrested for the murder of Kara Knott, where he was eventually sentenced 25 years to life in prison.
Hopefully he didn't get out. That's what I'm hoping. I mean, 25 to life. I assume it's guaranteed life no matter what.
Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. One of the most famous natural spectacles in the world.
My dad! Oh my God!
Considered one of the most visually stunning locations in the United States, and even across the world, the 3 waterfalls that make up Niagara Falls offer a unique blend of beauty and violence, making it no wonder why tens of thousands of people visit the area every day just to take in the awe-inspiring views and that unbelievable rush of water. But on March 20th, 2003, as a typical crowd gathered to take their photos, their attention was captured by something far different than the scenery. Something that couldn't have been possible. It looked like a man in the water. Though he wasn't being swept over and he wasn't moving at all, he was just standing there, at the very edge of the falls, staring off into oblivion. Police were immediately called to the scene as a panic arose, and within minutes, rescue crews would begin their work, along with a cameraman from a local news station.
In the cold. Oh my days. How have you ended up there, buddy? What?
The footage shows what should have been an impossible scenario, as an unnamed 48-year-old man was standing at the edge of the most powerful waterfall on the planet, somehow staying balanced and remaining fully calm, despite being just 1 foot away from dropping over 180 feet to certain death.
Oh my days.
Unsure of how the man had ended up in the water, or how it was even possible for him to stay upright, rescue workers sprang into action with 2 men, Pop Moriarty and Gary Carella, sliding into the water and attempting to walk towards him. But even for them, the current was just too much, forcing them to almost immediately turn back, while the man yelled to them that he was losing his strength and to not let him go over.
Mate.
To aid in the rescue, a helicopter was sent in to try and airlift the man up, but immediately the force of the rotors began to create strong gusts of wind, leading to this.
Is that what makes him fall? Oh no. Oh my god, he's still there. Holy shit.
Now the man lay there, feet dangling over the edge of the falls, as the freezing cold water pelted him relentlessly. By this point, that man had already been in the water for over 1 hour, and his grip was slowly slipping. And so, in a last-ditch prayer, a rescue worker inside the helicopter decided to toss a life preserver, knowing that this would likely be their final shot at saving him. And miraculously, the current caught it and brought it directly to him. With every bit of strength he had left, the man would let go of the rock he was clinging to and lunge towards the preserver, grabbing a hold of it as crews on shore began to pull him to safety. Or at least, they thought.
Oh, I've just forgot this is the channel we're reacting to. So he's basically got a last sort of chance of flipping survival, and I guess, I don't know what's going to happen, but man. How the hell has he ended up here in the first place? I'm so confused. So confused. I can't even speak. How has he ended up just on the waterfall?
As he was being towed to shore, the man approached what looked to be land, though in actuality this was an ice shelf that extended out over the water, meaning that the black line you see here isn't actually land, but instead a small opening between the sheet of ice and the water itself.
No.
And within that small opening, the rapids were raging at tenfold due to the increased pressure of the small size. And so, while the man was being pulled towards rescue workers, he was almost immediately sucked underneath, pinning him in an immovable situation. Moriarty and Carella knew that they had to engage once again, or else the man was certainly going to drown, with their testimony later on showing just how dire the situation had become.
He just told us, let me go. He just gave up. He said, save yourselves, let me go, let me go.
But the rescue crews had come too far to just give up, and despite the pressure of the water becoming almost too much to bear, Carella slipped a harness around the man and gave the signal for the group to be lifted up.
Mad. How the hell has he survived that?
Somehow, they had all done the impossible, and with the victim now on solid ground, he was taken to a nearby hospital where, despite suffering from severe hypothermia, he would go on to survive, making it one of the most incredible rescues ever shown on television. But with the victim now safe, it was time to figure out what exactly had happened. Well, apparently, the man had lost all of his money due to a crippling gambling addiction, even gambling away the last of his family's own cash, losing everything and everyone in the process. And he entered the water that day, hoping to make it his last. But as he drifted towards the edge, he suddenly had a change of heart, and decided to fight for survival. And somehow, when trying to stop himself, his foot became lodged in between 2 rocks, which also aided in shielding him from the rushing current, allowing him not only to stay there, but to stand upright. It's unknown what happened to the man from here, as he's understandably never been named publicly, but I do hope he managed to find some peace and purpose, as his story is one of very few of this nature with a happy ending, especially within Niagara Falls, as the area has become a hotspot for attempts just like this, the vast majority of which sadly end successfully. And as it turns out, one such example of this was captured when the cameras happened to be rolling.
Frazier that recorded the man's actions as he was taping a special program with Phil Kavitz. It is Phil's voice you will hear on the tape.
Factories, hotels, and other buildings line the river.
as TV host Phil Kavitz is recording a program for the local nightly
someone
news
there?
in Buffalo, New York. He
No.
did so near the mouth of Niagara Falls, where the rapids are raging in a particularly fearsome manner. When suddenly...
Buildings line the river.
Here?
Then Frederick Olmsted started a campaign to pursue...
Oh.
we see a man come running from the brush and leap directly into the water. For obvious reasons, I can't show what happens next, as the water begins to sweep the man towards the edge of the falls. But the audio alone is sufficient in showing just how traumatic the moment was for the news crews watching on.
Factories, hotels, and other buildings line the river. Then Frederick Olmsted started a campaign to persuade New York to buy the land.
Oh my God!
Holy Oh my God!
Oh my...
Oh!
As they watched in horror, the man was dragged to the edge and then swept directly off, going over head first and standing no chance of survival. According to the report, the man was never identified and his body was never found, likely having been pinned by the impossible force of the water at the bottom. But what I find most chilling about this video is the fact that it's only seemingly been archived in this poor quality, which makes deciphering details about it incredibly difficult. However, there were many who watched the program on TV the day after, as the news station actually aired this footage for the world to see, and one particular account has haunted me since the moment I first read it. I remember seeing this when it was first broadcast. Freaked me the hell out. It wasn't a worn-out videotape back then, and the image was a lot cleaner. The guy looked at the news crew and into the camera when they started yelling. Creepy and sad as hell. Despite being known for its beauty, there is a dark side to this amazing location, and one that has become, and likely will remain, no stranger to the world of television.
Well, I mean, one thing we realise is that guy is one lucky human being. I hope that sort of situation leads to you, like, sort of realising how special life is, and I guess leading to a positive, so I don't know what, but leading to just something positive. I mean, from there, I mean, I don't know. I guess when you go through that much pain and then you survive something like that, you maybe like have an enlightening and realise, okay, I need to make the most of this chance that I've been given, you know. But the cop being in the actual video of how to avoid roadside strangers is the perfect definition of dry snitching. It's just wild, that one. That is a wild ass sort of story and background to that. There's something darkly comedic about the radio guy commentating the fire without changing his cadence or tone, just like it was part of the game. I find the balloon story absolutely harrowing. Imagine being in the clouds with no idea. I mean, obviously, but you've just caused that yourself. I'm sorry, like, it's horrible, and I can't imagine how scared you'd be, but come on. And it's sad, right, because he was doing it for a good cause and all this, and I do understand it is horrible, like, and he was obviously a good person trying to do a good thing, but common sense needs to be there for some people, man. It's a dangerous thing to do as it is. Then the conditions like that, like, I mean, what can you say? But yeah, this is a look into the darkest moments in TV history. Let me know your thoughts on this, and until next time, I subscribe and peace.